All right, guys, welcome back. My name is Jack Paisley, and this is the Sports Casual. Major news coming out of the NFL that we got to talk about today. So let's get it. Let's start off with the Raiders. I would say making the splash hire of this last cycle since Ben Johnson got hired by the Bears, and the Raiders hire Pete Carroll, former Seahawks head coach for a long time, as well as USC legend. Uh, and they brought him in on a 3-year deal. And I actually think this is a great hire by the Raiders, unfortunately, as one of their division's rivals fans. I think that what the Raiders need to do is they need to bring stability to their organization. For the last several years, they've just been in constant shifting, multiple head coach coming in. I think they're paying like four of them, and uh, Josh McDaniels, Gruden. Uh, they're just paying a bunch of coaches that aren't even there. So they really needed to bring somebody in that was going to build stability, even though it's a like on paper it's a terrible job. You have Max Crosby and then Brock Bowers. That's about all that you have on this team in terms of Pro Bowl caliber players, and you have no quarterback, and you don't have the draft capital to really draft that. So you need to bring in a coach that can kind of navigate just frankly having a bad NFL roster and trying to build a culture while you're trying to figure that out on the fly. And Pete definitely fits that bill. And now that he is in the AFC West, that coaching lineup is Pete Carroll, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh. I would argue that might be the best coached division in NFL history. I don't think I can think of anybody else that's really close. That is murderer's row in that division. And unfortunately for Pete, he currently doesn't really have the roster or the quarterback situation figured out compared to the other teams. Obviously, the Broncos have Bo Nix, who's a rookie, so we'll still see. But I actually think it's a really good hire by them. I think it's a very smart move to actually bring in an established coach that can help build that culture, even though he is a little older, and then try to set the stage for the next administration once he's probably going to retire, would be my guess, just because he's a little older. um I don't think they're going to have a lot of success in the next two seasons unless they stumble upon a quarterback, or maybe like a Justin Fields or somebody like that goes in there. I've heard rumors that Russell Wilson would go, but I don't really see that one happening just because of the fallout between Russ and Pete out at the end of Seattle. So I think it's Justin Fields or maybe a Sam Darnold or somebody like that coming in to try to stabilize that and be that bridge quarterback until they can find that next rookie. Um, but I actually was surprised and a little. I was happy for Raiders fans, even though I don't like them, is the way I would put that, because uh, that's a good hire. But what was a terrible hire, in my opinion, was done by Jerry Jones of the Cowboys. They hire their now former OC, Brian Schottenheimer, basically on a spur of the moment. They started interviewing him 2 weeks ago. He wasn't really a legitimate candidate. I don't believe he interviewed with anybody else other than maybe the Jets. The Jets interviewed everybody under the sun. Uh, but yeah, they stay in house, which is not surprising if you know Jerry Jones, you typically do pretty well within the organization if he likes you. And I think they brought in a yes man. I think they brought in a guy that Jerry can scapegoat, and he knows it, and he'll take it on the chin because he's making big time money. So congrats to him. Um, but if you look at it, like their offense was nothing crazy last year. I don't know what you're expecting to change there, other than Dak will be, theoretically healthy, so you'll have a higher you know, quarterback play. Outside of that, you have CD Lamb as your only weapon. So they're gonna really have to go after that in free agency or the draft. Um, Outside of that, I don't see their defense getting better. I I he's a first time head coach, so he doesn't really know what he's doing yet. Um, so I don't see a scenario where this works out for Cowboys fans, which I don't know a lot of the Cowboys fans that like this hire. A lot of them were unreasonable in their push for Deion Sanders, but I at least understand the why you would want to hire Deion Sanders. I don't really get the upside from this, other than it's just another one of Jerry Jones play toys that he gets to be a billionaire, like playing with a video game. Basically, is what he's doing. That I think this is gonna not last long. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a 1 year hire and they're in the coaching carousel next year, and it just shows that that organization is frankly a shit show. Like, they missed out on interviewing all of the legitimate top candidates, whether that's Ben Johnson, Pete Carroll. I mean, Pete's got kind of that flash that I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd looked at him, or any of these guys, Aaron Glenn. Like, they missed out on all of these top talents because they drugged their feet with Mike McCarthy, because they didn't want to pay his contract to sever him. And yeah, I think this will blow up spectacularly, and it's going to be really funny to watch. And it's going to be highlighted on a national level if they don't win and win immediately. And Jerry Jones is going to get really loud, and Jerry doesn't tend to like when people question what he's done and disagree with his opinion. So I think that's the worst hire of this cycle, and yeah. I wish Brian Schottenheimer all the best luck, but you're gonna have a tough time seeing change if you're a Cowboys fan, in my opinion. And then kind of like the drama-filled one hire was the Bucks. The Bucks have announced they're hiring Liam Cohen, who is the or not the Bucks. The Jags are hiring the Bucks former OC Liam Cohen. The reason this is so dramatic is he was interviewing for them, basically said, "No, I'm going to go back to the Bucks." The Bucks re-signed him to one of the largest extensions for a coordinator and basically in the league. And then, like a day later, the Jags fire their GM, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm interested. Like, I definitely want to take that job." It just kind of shows you that Liam Cohen wasn't willing to bet his reputation on that GM, which he's survived a couple of different coaching eras, so I'm not surprised. But uh, I think there are I had two main takeaways from this hire. One, I felt bad for Baker Mayfield. Baker just had I would argue, MVP caliber season in terms of being in the conversation. He won't win it, but I think he deserved to be in that conversation. And part of that is because of Liam Cohen, obviously. So he's going to have to go back to the drawing board and learn another new offense, which he's done at least 4 times by my count. So I felt bad for Baker in that it's just a constant turbulence, and it does kind of make me respect Baker Mayfield even more, just based off of all of the disruptions to his career he's had to deal with, the different cities, the different head coaches, the different OCs, being traded several times, like for being a former number one overall pick that was kind of declared a bust, or like kind of in that category. He's dealt with it beautifully, and you can't be not happy for the guy making all that money after getting just shit on in Cleveland and then written off in Carolina, and then thankfully Sean McVay stepped in and kind of re kickstarted his career. And then my other takeaway is for Trevor Lawrence. Clearly, we saw Baker Mayfield, who, as a pure athletic like prototype, is nowhere near as talented as Trevor Lawrence. If Trevor does not go out and, barring injury, basically ball out, or at least be a very capable starting quarterback within the NFL, I think it's going to get loud in Jacksonville. He's gone through, I believe, at least 3 coaches now, maybe 4, and he's the common denominator. If this Liam Cohen doesn't work with him, I think you're going to start hearing it get loud. He's getting paid all this money. He was supposed to be like the next best prospect since Andrew Luck. And now you have one of the top OCs now becoming your head coach. You're kind of running out of excuses here. Like, you can argue that they don't have the talent on the roster, but they pay big money to in this offseason for guys like Christian Kirk and like these top end receivers. I think Zay Jones was there for a while. Like, they do try to surround him with talent. So at some point, you're gonna have to point that back at Trevor if he's still underperforming with this new coaching staff. So I think if this kind of doesn't work, and I'd give it 2 years, but it's gonna get loud at the end of one if they're still not playing well. I think you start listening to Trevor Lawrence as a potential bust candidate. And then the Jets hire defensive coordinator of the Lions and their former player, which is kind of a fun story. Aaron Glenn. I did not love this hire personally. I thought in this situation, I would have liked to see Pete Carroll or Mike McCarthy. It's just a huge market. It gets loud, and they have historically been really bad. So similar to the Raiders, I think you need to bring in a culture builder. Which, to be fair, Aaron Glenn might be. He's been around the Lions for the last couple of years, and clearly was involved in making that culture what it is. And he's a former player of the Jets, so I understand his interest in them. But it basically looked to me like you're replacing Robert Saleh with Robert Saleh, and we clearly saw what that looked like. Like I didn't think they should have fired him when they did. To be fair for the Jets, but I don't see a huge difference. I mean, you can argue that maybe he's a better rah guy, but I wouldn't say that his defense was drastically better than with Saleh and the Jets last year. I don't think that. He's not known for his offensive ability, so obviously he's going to have to build a staff, but I just don't see how the Jets picture this as like a complete 180 and building them into this powerhouse of a team. So I probably would if I could have redone this, I actually wouldn't have mind Aaron Glenn in Dallas. I probably would have put him there over Schottenheimer to try to bring kind of that tough guy energy back to the Cowboys. Um, but yeah, I think they'll be the same as kind of under the solid administration, kind of that like 6-8 or 6-9, I guess, to 8-8, 8-9, kind of like just that middle of the road team where they can go and beat anybody, but they're not going to be pushing for the playoffs, especially in that division. I don't see it. I don't see it working. And then so the last one that's open is the Saints. And kind of the top remaining names with Robert Saleh signing with the 49ers is Mike McCarthy, and then maybe Kellen Moore is probably the next best one. The OC out in Philly and the former uh, quarterbacks coach for the Cowboys, and I think he got up to OC as well out with the Cowboys. I think either of them would probably be okay in this one. Again, the Saints since Sean Payton left, thank God because he's with my Broncos. There we go, Vanilla Vic baby. Is I it just kind of went to frankly to shit under Dennis Allen. That I think Mike McCarthy's the lock signing here. I think he's got a ton of leverage. Obviously, he's won everywhere he went, other than like Super Bowl caliber. But he's been a capable head coach everywhere he's been. That I think that you bring him in again just to build that stability. I think a lot of these teams have just been so mismanaged recently that you gotta bring in like an adult and just solidify the team, just so you can avoid the kind of the like mismanagement and of the teams because it gets so loud, and then especially in these famous teams like you can kind of get away with the Jags because no one really pays attention. The Jets are historically a laughing stock, but for a long time the Saints were actually a really good organization. That it can get loud, especially because Mike McCarthy coming off of Dallas is going to have a lot of eyeballs. That it can get loud if you get it wrong, especially because they don't really have a long term quarterback. I think Derek Carr's probably got a year left before they're really aggressively looking to replace him. Um, but he's got, Mike McCarthy's got a ton of leverage. That I think he's going to be the best fit here. Otherwise, I think he'll kind of do what Vrabel did last year and to sit a year out, and then maybe you got like a Bengals job open, which I kind of doubt. If Joe Burrow's playing that well, I struggle to see Zach Taylor getting fired, but maybe a Steelers job or something like that comes open. that's where I think he will end up, is either in this with the Saints this year or taking that year off to see where the best possible landing zone is. Uh, and it's fun to see. This is my favorite, kind of the favorite time of year for news because it's exciting. I don't think anybody realistically was like Pete Carroll for sure is going to be the Raiders coach this year. Ryan Schottenheimer, I sure as hell know it, and was rooting for that guy to be the Cowboys coach, and no one was talking about it other than they were conducting interviews. So it's fun to see, especially once the free agency comes around. That's my favorite time of the year because you get these big shifts in personalities and like big name players that like Saquon last year totally switched that whole half of the league. Like the NFC runs through Saquon right now. That this is the best time of the year. We're just getting started and we'll see where all this is coming out after this last position gets filled, and then you'll start seeing, coordinators or college guys get called up. The one last one that I would maybe think about if I'm the Saints. I don't think they're going to do this. I should preface this, but I would look at the Notre Dame head coach. If he is willing to leave college, I would offer him the job. I think he's a culture builder. I think he is essentially the defensive Sean McVay. And if he works, that's your coach for the next 30 years. Smaller market, so it's going to be quiet. It kind of gives him a chance to get his teeth in the NFL a little bit, but that's the other hire that I would think about. But again, I don't think that's going to be what happens. I think it's going to be Mike McCarthy, and then we get to proceed to NFL free agency after the playoffs. But yeah, it's a fun time. Thanks for watching. It's been Jack Paisley with the Sports Casual.